when he was talking about Ms. Ventura, he said, this is going to be easy, I'm paraphrasing, because she's so young.
Real life.
It ain't real life. Just ain't real life. Street stars. Know what time it is.
Now, during the testimony, of course, this week is the first time we're actually hearing, outside of what Cassie experienced, the R word, grape. We're actually hearing that scenarios where Diddy, did that to his personal assistant, to where when she describes it as the first time it happening, and I understand how even any women juror could understand, when they say things like he forced himself into my space, he had one hand undoing his belt, the other hand, grabbing himself and putting himself inside me. Those words are triggering not only to, like you said, the elderly, the young, women, and most men. To hear the allegations of that's where he did, and mind you, there was multiple allegations. She spoke on being on a yacht where she just walked by and he was standing right there. That it happened right there again. She was on a bus. She was on one of the things. He came in, she just felt the weight on her, woke up to him on top of her, and he did it right there again. It's always the interpretation of what it is at the time. Because again, normally if it's a violent, graping, you're going to go to the police. You're going to tell somebody right then and there. You're going to have somebody be able to co-sign saying that, she told me that happened immediately. Mm-hmm. For it to be so many years later, a decade or so later, and she's saying that what she experienced was not, willingly. It was forced on her. And then it happened again and again. Where does it come as far as that testimony, where the belief is in that, like, okay, you didn't leave and this happened to you again and again. And you sound like, he's like, I didn't want it. There was a time when she's in the closet. He just walked in, pulled himself out, grabbed her head, and made her, whatever. And you stayed. And so it comes to like, and again, it's very touchy subject right now as far as speaking on this, but how does that play out in the court in front of jurors when you stayed and it kept happening? And then finally up until him getting caught with this whole situation now is when now you're like, okay, let me tell my story.
So let me start off with the pluses for the prosecution on this, right? Those graphic details and going back and saying the things that she said are going to be absolute key. And it's going to be the weight of the jury or the weight of that testimony for the jury to kind of decide if that is plausible or believable. And to go through those type of recounting what happened to you is something that's very powerful. And for her to be able to give, and we don't know exactly how detailed she got into that testimony, right? Did she talk about birthmarks or anything that only someone who would have had a sexual encounter with someone would know? Those type of things are going to be absolutely key. The second thing is the grooming aspect of it. The previous, I can't remember which of the male assistants made the statement, but when he was talking about Ms. Ventura, he said, this is going to be easy, I'm paraphrasing, because she's so young.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so now, depending on the age of this assistant, when these acts happen, it could show that Mr. Combs had a target range or an age group that he kind of knew that if he showed himself to be a father figure or put himself in that Camelot type atmosphere, or Lancelot type atmosphere, that he would be able to have his way with these women. And so all of that is going to play in a juror's mind. On the flip side, for the defense, the question was brought up. You were interviewed by law enforcement. Why didn't you bring this up then? Why are you just now bringing this up during this trial? That wasn't your testimony or your statements to law enforcement previously. And so the credibility of her statements and the gaps are going to be things that the jury is going to look at, especially if the defense hammers in on that. That, okay, she said this, but when she gets up here, she makes it worse by saying these things. Why weren't they said then? And so all of that's going to play a role, especially since she was seeing a therapist, and, you know, the thought process might be she's come or she's had some breakthroughs or she's gotten to a point where she could talk about some of these things. And so she should have said these things previously. I wouldn't even be surprised if the defense would lay into the fact that the prosecution coached her into saying some of these things.
Yeah, she mentioned something, and again, it's all about when you say things like, she said, Diddy always liked to finish. Like how long did it last? She mentioned that until he finished, you know, like he always finishes. And I'm like, man, if, you know, and I get it, again, touchy subject to where, how do you tell a person no or stop? Or it just goes into the question of, so this is going on for minutes, let's say, going into, and she didn't say it was quick. Like they'll say, how long did it take? Quick. But that's, you know,
Relative.
It's relative. So, but she did mention that he liked to finish. Like he had to, you know, finish. And I'm like, man, it goes back to, like you said, if the defense, you know, brings it in, you know, were you smiling during this? Were you laughing? Did you enjoy it and things? And she'll most likely say no, but should Diddy, and I got to get your take on this, should Diddy testify? Should he get on that stand to speak to his point of view of all these scenarios?
I don't know. I haven't sat down with him. Before I let a witness testify, especially in a criminal case, I'm going to drill them. I need to see what your temperament is. I need to see if you get frazzled or if you change stories. And let me just tell everybody, you can say whatever the heck you want to say. I've seen the strongest people who thought they were all that, people who like would argue with people in the street and fight, get up on that witness stand and crumble. Them bright lights hit you, it's a whole different ball game, because now everybody in that room is looking at you. And I'm telling you, I had a witness, a client, that she told me she was the end all be all, and she was this, and she was strong, and she was this. And it was a deposition, and she got to talking, and I'm glad I wasn't on camera, because I looked at her side-eyed like,
Shout out RealLyfe Street Stars, nigga. Move it. Hey.